Hello, everyone. Welcome, Anil, on this awesome podcast, Code to Conquer, where we talk about a lot of different strategies of how to run your dev shop or your IT business. Today, I have Anil. Anil has been in tech industry for a very, very long time, and he's touched all aspects of tech. Today, he's working at a lot of different companies as a board member. He's advising companies how to scale, how to grow, how to be efficient in operations. So Anil, welcome to this show.
Great. No, thank you, Rajeev. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Anil, just to start things off, just maybe give us a Cliff Notes version of who you are, why do you exist, and where you're headed. What do you do currently?
Great. No, thank you. Spent, as you mentioned, many years in the technology field. I spent about 30 years in consulting. I was a partner in a firm called PricewaterhouseCoopers Consulting, and they got bought by IBM. So I had moved from the partnership to an IBM executive role. Ran many practices for IBM in the consulting side. Ran the insurance practice for IBM. And then became the CIO of a bank called SunTrust, which is now called Truist. And in that space, I ran all the technology and all the operations for the bank. Did that for about 6 or 7 years, and then retired from there, and then went to work for the White House to run technology transformation for the federal government. And that was very interesting. Wow. And I can dig into any of those areas. And then the last 3 years I spent as the head of strategy and technology for Cognizant. Cognizant, as you know, is a $20 billion global technology services firm. And in that, I was responsible for the corporate strategy, business development, and all the technology portfolio of services that we provided to our clients. I retired from that back in June of last year, and have been doing a lot of work with private equity firms, working with boards, doing speaking engagements, and just advising companies on the area of technology. Now that everyone talks about Gen AI, this is the most interesting time to be in technology as far as I'm concerned. So having a lot of fun doing that kind of work.
Wow, such a wide experience. I've had a lot of guests on the podcast, but none who has retired or doing this kind of work. So it's interesting to see. So you're kind of wearing the hat from a PE perspective to see exactly how private equity companies are starting to acquire almost everything right now. I know a lot of my friends who are in IT service business, they get pinged by private equity, especially in IT services. I thought that wasn't a business that they wanted to acquire, but it's really interesting to see that they're looking at, sort of a business where it's, decent margin and high growth, because there is a lot of software development needs out there.
Yeah, the needs have grown tremendously. So the demand is very, very high. The source of people and talent is really being the issue. And a lot of the software firms and engineering firms are the ones who bridge the gap there. And so a lot of the private equity firms are looking at who are these firms? Do they have the scalability? Can we scale them up really fast? And then can we actually sell them to a Cognizant or an Accenture or have them IPO if they so desire? So it's a hot market, and it went through a little bit of after COVID, growing up, and a little bit of after COVID hangover, but now it's picking back up in a significant fashion.
Yeah. We see a huge uptick, a lot of consulting projects that we're doing for a lot of different customers. So awesome. So just taking a step back, tell us you touched a lot of places, you've been to a lot of places. Talk about one of the most complex problems you have solved, especially from a tech perspective and an operations perspective. Walk us through that. And what was it like? Give us some numbers.
So the biggest, probably the hardest problem that I had to solve was at the bank. When you're working with a bank like SunTrust, and you have a lot of legacy environments, platforms that have been there for 40 years, the ability to go and digitally transform a bank of that magnitude, to really take into account newer technologies and put in the new technologies while dealing with the legacy, was probably the biggest transformation that needed to happen. There's, most people don't go to a branch anymore. Everybody's using, their phones to interact with their financial advisors. So it was a major transformation in terms of how you go about doing something like that, in terms of taking the legacy, figuring out a way to transform the legacy, building what we used to call a services layer or an API layer on top of that to ensure that all the new stuff could work. Building a data layer on top of that, which is now becoming even more significant given all the AI and ML work that needs to take place, and transforming the whole platform of the bank. So I had the good fortune of having to deal with that and coming up with the right strategy. Because every time you can't just take an old legacy platform and put in a new one. There's so many connection points. There's so many pieces. So you really have to have a good plan and good strategy in terms of how you drive that change. There are many other things, but that was probably, if you want to go back to my career, that was probably the hardest problem.
So give us some hard numbers. Where was the base and where did you get it to when you left? In terms of employees, in terms of like transactions, in terms of volume, or maybe simple in terms of, the revenue grew X.
Yeah, if you just, probably the easiest way to look at it is the ways in which clients interact with the bank. When we started, the interactions were less than 50 to 60% were digital interactions. Most of the bank interactions were someone goes to the branch or someone, goes and submits a bunch of applications, on client onboarding. That's a huge manual process in a bank.
Right.
The whole multiple copies and signature forms and document management that's needed. And, you're dealing with banks in terms of your deposit platforms, your lending platforms, your investment platforms. All of those needed to be digitized. So to take transactions that were digital transactions that were less than 50%, and now, you're talking about transactions that are about 80, 90% digitized. That is really where the journey was, right? So, and all of that helps everything that you talked about in terms of, revenue growth, in terms of real, payments activities that go through your platforms and so on. All of that helps in a big way, but that's, I'd rather not talk about the percentage of revenue growth. I'll just talk about it in terms of digital, number of digital transactions growing from less than 50% to great, well over 80 to 85%.
And was it a lot of in-house development, and how did you, or in-house or outside, tell us about the structure of how did you actually make all of this happen? How did you make sure that a company of that size moves in the right direction and move really fast?
So it's a combination of a lot of that, right? So the first and foremost is what is your architecture and what is your strategy? So we built an architectural platform that enables you to, as I called it earlier, a services or an API layer that really enables you to isolate the legacy platform so that you can start eliminating the legacy. So the architecture is very important. And the bringing on of new technologies, it was a combination of software as a service vendors, custom development where appropriate. And, we had a team of well over, I'd say 8,000 app dev, technology testing, infrastructure folks, between people in US, people in India, people in Philippines, people in Brazil. That was a fairly large team, and we used a lot of our partners, folks like Cognizant and so on, to help us with the actual delivery. But you're also dealing with, in the banking world, you're dealing with a lot of software that is provided to you by software vendors. There are a lot of software vendors out there in the
Correct.
FISA
Yep.
and so on. So it's the ability to integrate all of those with the right architecture, with the right layers of people, and it's a massive transformation journey with hundreds of projects that are run through, and you got to look at the investment plan and the return on investments. So it's a massive program that we undertook that took about 6 to 7 years, and it's still, I think a lot of it has to be upgraded now, given Gen AI and so on.
That's true. I remember I was working for a bank, and there were a lot of discussions about changing a flag in a database, and it took like 22 people over a period of 3 months to do so. So when you say that there were 8,000 people, I understand, moving large amount of teams in the right direction, and especially being nimble, flexible, and implementing agile. It's not
Right.
it's not easy.
Yeah, and building the agile teams to be focused on the right value streams and going after that. It's not just the tech folks. You've got to get the business leaders and the product managers and so on really engaged in that. We built something called an Accelerator, which is really about how do you accelerate the go-to-market, the speed to market using agile methods and so on. So it's you mentioned it takes a lot of people to change one flag in the banking world. Some of these systems are 40 years old. So when you got a 40-year-old system, the interfaces to that 40-year-old system grow over time. So some of like a core deposit platform had well over 100 plus integration points. And so if you change a little field here, you're affecting 100 other systems, and you got to be able to manage through all of that.
So having been there, done that, you reflect on that. What things, based on where technology is today, including AI, machine learning, what can you go back and change now after having been there and done that? What are some of the things that you could go back and say, gosh, I should have done this, I should have done that to actually improve the speed or scalability?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, because I think now with AI, there's so many aspects of the delivery that can be changed. It's about the coding. Do we have the right platforms to code in? Do we need to have 8,000 people, for example? Can you do a lot of Gen AI for the mundane creation of basic libraries? That could be a lot more productive. The testing, we had a massive integrated testing team, test data creation, test automation. All of that can be really changed with Gen AI.
That's true.
Then you look at the actual data infrastructure. When people talk about AI, it's as though it suddenly showed up in 2022. We've been doing AI for hundreds of, not hundreds, for 15, 20 years. We've been doing it in banking, especially, whether it's fraud or risk management or underwriting. There's been a lot of machine learning and AI tools in place, but the data needs to be there. And building that data layer in such a way that can be integrated with external data, using large language models. We use small language models, if you would call it that, small models, right? So now the ability to use large language models and integrating that with the right APIs into your platform can really speed up a lot of the activities. Fundamentally, we're talking about a digital transformation program. With AI now, that digital transformation program is now on steroids. That's what's going to happen.
That's true. Yeah, suddenly you have a coding assistant or assistant for everything. And then you can, if you want to leverage it, you can go really far, really quick. No, I have to.
One of the things I ran was a contact centers. And so just think about it, with thousands of people sitting in the Philippines answering phone calls, can you automate a lot of those? They're all using FQs, they're using standard procedures. And you have a little bit of empathy that's thrown in, or not a little bit, a lot of empathy that's thrown in the contact center. But now you can do a lot of that, right? You can have Gen AI showing empathy. You can have Gen AI working through those. So I'm not sure if it's all there, if there's a lot of it is hype, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to streamline contact centers.
I love that. We did a project on contact center. It was eye-opening. Yeah, let's
Right.
just put it that way. I'm curious though. You don't have to tell me what you did at White House, but how was the experience working with the White House or inside the White House?
Yeah, no, it's so I was a presidential appointee to run something called Technology Transformation Services. And probably the best experience was the team that we had. There's about 300 or so people. And these are people who are there to give back to the country. They're there, some of them are on a 2-year stints or 4-year stints. We had the Presidential Innovation Fellows, a team of really very, very smart technologists who could get any job paying lots and lots of money in the private world, but they're willing to give back to the country and not get paid a lot. So that was very heartening to see that young people wanted to do that.
Yeah.
The ability to change things in the federal government is very difficult. And we really accomplished a lot of things, building centers of excellence that each of the agencies could use. It was very good to see that happening. I can give you examples and so on of those things that are still running. But then the other piece is, learning how the government works. One of the things I ran was a platform called FedRAMP, which is if you are a software provider to the federal government, you have to be FedRAMP certified from a risk perspective, from a cybersecurity perspective. And so many times I had to testify in front of Congress to say, here is what we're doing with that program. And that was very eye-opening to see how Congress worked and how the House Oversight Committee looked at a lot of this. So it's a very, I think it's, people have a view of federal government that once you are there, you start realizing that there's a lot of very hardworking people doing some very interesting things with a lot of value, and they're mission oriented because they're there for the country, right? So that's true. It's very good to see.
Very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. Now, just pivoting back to our talk, as we look at you sitting in a lot of boards and advising a lot of companies, or also helping with PE firms, what problems do you see that are yet to be solved that someone should solve?
I think there's still, people talk about the fact that technology is going to replace everybody's jobs. I'm a very optimistic person in the sense that I think every time we put in new technology, in fact, it creates jobs, right? And there's so many new jobs out there. But I think that we're at this early stage, what I call the bottom of the S-curve, to really transform a lot of what's out there. People have been migrating to the cloud. People have been building IoT solutions. People have been building new data engineering solutions. People have been putting in the AI and ML stuff, and now we got Gen AI. But the problems that need to be solved that still remain are, what do you do with your legacy environment? What do you do with your, are you really transforming the business? A lot of times people now are saying that they're doing stuff using Gen AI, but they're just playing with it. They're doing proof of concepts. They're just doing, they're trying and buying, which is not unreasonable, but are you really significantly transforming the company? That's not happening, I don't think. And that's yet to happen. And I think—
And why is that?
I think people are still a little bit unsure
skeptical
of hallucinations, data quality, accuracy, quality. If you take the contact centers, you could put Gen AI there and do a lot of things, but you could have a really bad client experience. People are afraid of that, and so that's one. So there's like 3 or 4 things that I think need to be overcome. One is, are we really generating value? 2 is, are you really managing risk? 3 is, do you have the right talent to make these changes happen, which I don't think most people have. And then 4 is, do you really know what the costs are? And a lot of people are worried about, they just go buy an LLM and say, yeah, we got it. But that's the tip of the iceberg. There's so many pieces below just buying an LLM. So that's it. So the cost associated with this is going to grow massively. A lot of people are now worried about their cloud expense, and they're saying, cloud expense has gone up so much. Well, guess what? When you put in all these Gen AI solutions, all your consumption costs, all your CPU, storage, all of that's going to grow. So
absolutely.
People don't know what's going to hit them with the cost. So anyway, that's
we see that. No, we see that in our business. A lot of our customers, they're moving a lot of their infrastructure on-prem to cloud, and they're working with cloud vendors to make sure that the costs are comparable or lower, because they don't want to be fully dependent on them and find out that the costs are astronomical and then move back to on-prem or private cloud. So that's interesting. Awesome. Thank you, Anil. We're going to switch to a quick rapid fire. Just a few things. I want to understand like who you are outside of work. Tell me, what books are you reading, or one of your favorite books?
Probably my most favorite book is Ray Dalio's Principles. I don't know if you've read it, but it's a really amazing book. What I just read recently is a book by an Indian philosopher called J. Krishnamurti, who passed away in the 90s. But the book is called What Are You Doing With Your Life, which is a very good book. So if you get a chance to read it. And it's very easy to read because it's just paragraphs.
I love it.
It's very easy to read.
Our attention span is super low right now.
I'm working through the Fareed Zakaria book on the age of revolution. So that's also, he's just put that out there. So it's a wild world that's there, but it's a combination. I like to read 2 or 3 books at the same time.
Awesome. Favorite apps on your phone?
Probably, I read a lot, and I read the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. I play Sudoku a lot on the phone, so it's one of those things. So if I have the time, it's Sudoku. If I'm just catching up with the news, it's the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times.
Yeah, same here. WSJ is my favorite app. Any favorite movies or shows that you're watching?
I just flip through a lot, so I'm not. I usually forget the name of the show, which I'm terrible at. But I know it was a very interesting show. But I'm not very good at retaining proper names.
Cool. Any favorite vacation spot that you go to?
Well, we're going to Zanzibar, so I'm looking forward to that. I've never been to Zanzibar, and then following that with a trip to the Serengeti. So
interesting.
2 things that I haven't done. Zanzibar has got a good mix of Indian, Arab, and African culture, and it's off the coast of Tanzania. So
interesting. I have to look it up.
Looking forward.
I didn't know there was a country like that, but that's cool. Any tips on productivity for people who are trying to be, grow up or at leadership roles, or anyone?
No, I mean, not that I'm not very good at giving tips, but I think the main thing I'd just say is be present. If you do what you like doing, and really figure out how to do that well. And network is the main thing. I find that people are very interesting people. Getting to know them personally is always a good thing. And that's this is, you're only here in this world for this amount of time, and you become who you are only based on the people that you know and people that you impact. So enjoy the people.
I love it. Thank you, Anil, for being on this podcast. Really insightful information. And once again, thank you for speaking to our audience, and what a wonderful background.
Great. Thank you so much, Rajeev.
All right.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.